Dirt roads to rock crawling, two-buck chuck to screaming eagle, moonshine to 50-year-old single malt. We talk about it all here on Wheelin' Wine and Whiskey with your hosts, Jason and Chris.
Welcome to Wheeling Wine and Whiskey, episode 164 on Riverside. One more time here, Chris, but you and I are feet apart.
Feet apart.
And we have a very special guest, again, back-to-back.
Yeah, first time ever.
With Nick Bailey.
Nick Bailey.
Avalanche Technical.
Avalanche Technical, that's right.
So, Chris, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm
okay. You are better than I am. I guarantee it.
Well, I just...
I guarantee you're better than me.
Yeah, you're probably right, but my health is
right.
improving, but... just to give an update, last time we recorded, I was still struggling with an ear infection, and actually, as of today, I'm still having an ear infection. A week later, went and saw an ENT this afternoon on my way
Ear,
home
nose,
from
and
work.
throat.
Ear, nose, and throat doctor. She took a big,
it was her.
Her, yeah. She took a look in my ear.
Was she good looking?
You know.
If Chris said she wasn't that good looking, she couldn't have been that good looking. Just saying. Okay, go ahead.
She was friendly.
She was friendly. She was nice. Was she overweight?
No, she was cool. I mean, she looked in my ear and she, said,
Did she see your brain?
I think she sucked my brain out. She got a vacuum.
She put a plunger on there or something.
Ear vacuum and sucked a bunch of stuff out of my ear and said, oh, okay, you have, we're going to squirt a little of this paste in here and it's going to stay in there all week. It's what did she say? A fungicide or something? I don't know.
A fungicide. That's from the golf course.
And an antibiotic. And anyway, so it's supposed to stay in my ear all week. And
so you got like toothpaste in your ear right now?
Yeah, pretty much. So my right ear again is shut down. And I can only hear out of my left ear.
It's a good thing you have two ears.
That's a good thing I have two. Well, I was trying to simulate that for you. You only had one. Only one side of your headphones was working earlier.
Right, exactly.
So I figured, I'd handicap you too.
Okay, well, we got to see. Your breathing, we had comments on your breathing last time, so we got to watch. No, it was like nasally.
Luke,
like, it was not good. So we're...
All right, well, when you all get old like me...
No, but we just, yeah, here you go. All right. So,
needle and thread.
That's right. Let's get into this. So, Nick, welcome to the podcast once again. This is becoming a weekly occurrence here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back. It's been a whirlwind of a week. Heard from lots of people about the show, and that was a lot of fun, right? Talked to some people I haven't talked to in several months, maybe a year in certain cases. So, yeah, it was awesome. It sounds like everyone enjoyed it.
And you had people in Australia and stuff contact you as well, right?
Yeah, well, I'd mentioned my buddy, right? The guy that I met out at CSU. He was an exchange student back when I lived in the dorms at Colorado State. And so I had that mentioned when we were talking about the in-reaches and the ability to post to Facebook. So, so he was kind of on the hook. I was like, "Hey, man, you're in there somewhere." And so I think he wound up listening to the whole.
But that's cool.
Show
and that's what you and I had a conversation this week about that, and that's why we do the podcast, man. The bottom line is because it's fun. We get to meet a lot of people, and the connections, like you said, of people, that are like, "Hey, I heard the podcast, and that's awesome, and I didn't know about that whole story." And I mean, it's a fun way, another avenue for people to connect and hear different stories.
Reconnections.
Exactly.
You're, like you said, you're reconnecting with people you hadn't talked to in a while, and that's super cool. And, getting updates on everybody's lives and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's a great conduit, and that was it. Put one of the few 2 rays of sunshine that I had in my week. That was one of them, is hearing your conversation about the people that you reconnected with. So I love that, and that's why we do what we do. So good stuff, man. Well, let's go ahead.
Yeah, definitely the opportunity, and then we've got. I think just a little bit. We had opened this thing up to some questions, so there's a little bit of housekeeping as far as Glacier Girl is concerned. Okay. Well, so the number one question, it sounds like from your end and from mine, right? We each had a kind of open mic, asking folks to reach out and let us know if they had outstanding questions. So in regards to the recovery, the big one was whatever happened to the truck.
Yeah,
right?
the K30.
Yeah, so it sounds like there was a little confusion. A couple of people asked about a Blazer. The truck is known to the family as Grandpa. It's a K30 square body, and simply it sat deeper on the trail than the Jeep did, right? So everything we covered last time all related to the Cherokee, and I don't know if I ever actually said the date. I think it was May 10th is when the Cherokee came off the trail, May 10th, 2017. And after that, right, it's all of us had been striving for that goal for so long. And I think that most folks were a little bit worn out. And so we all kind of took a break and decided that at that point, we'd be waiting for the rest of the snow to melt. The truck was not in a precarious situation. Right. It was not in the middle of the trail. It was not in a body of water whatsoever, right? It had been parked off to the side with flat tires. So we figured we could kind of give that some time. And the owner and some of the other guys in the group wound up picking Father's Day weekend 2017. So that is when the recovery of the pickup truck took place. Unfortunately for me, I was not there. I was actually racing the Baja 500 was that same weekend in 2017. Just happened to be racing the Baja
500, Chris.
I know, right?
Right?
Sorry, couldn't be there.
Do they sell tickets to that, or how does that work? I don't know. It just happened to be racing the Baja 500.
All you need is a passport.
And entry fees, probably.
Well, sometimes. It seems like we go with a big group of guys, and there's always somebody that either didn't have a passport, has an expired passport, or lost or had stolen a bag or their passport while they were in Mexico. So I think they'd let you back, Jason.
All right, that's good to know, because Lorenzo has ruined our name in Mexico. I can say that
and my credit card.
Yeah, your credit card's no longer accepted in Mexico, Chris.
I know,
and that's saying something, because they accept every form of payment in Mexico.
Bring your American Express, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, okay, so you were not on that final recovery of the K30 pickup, but it did get recovered. So inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, so I did my due diligence this week. I touched base with Scott Bruns, who is a gentleman I mentioned last time, because he was with us, all through the Cherokee recovery. Anytime a wheeled vehicle could get in, he was there. He's got a big YJ, and at the time, I think it was on 42s, and it was a champ. I've got so many photographs of that thing just on the verge of flipping over, driving in and out of those tank traps.
That's so cool.
So Scott and I talked on the phone a couple times from the last.
No, you don't have to love the YJs, Chris.
From the last. There's not much YJ left, but it's a hell of a rig. It's the grill that counts.
You're right, in the square headlights, absolutely.
7-slot grill, 7-slot grill.
Headlights. So talked to him twice this week to make sure that I had all the details right. But they put a group together. I don't know exactly how many rigs showed up, but most folks would probably be disappointed to hear that because we had waited, at that time from the 10th until Father's Day 17, you're probably talking three and a half weeks, something like that. And, they drove right in. I'm sure, they battled a little bit of snow, and some of those tank traps were still there. But in general, it was nothing compared to the Cherokee recovery. Got to the spot where the K30 was stuck. I think a tree had come down right on the cab. So the roof was like V'd. Kind of had that bomber windshield line.
The bomber windshield line. Nice. That nice V. I love that.
So it had taken a hit from a tree. It had no windshield. Interestingly enough, there had been so much snow piled up on that thing over the winter that the shock towers on the front, they had like an aftermarket shock tower. They were folded over. Leaf spring, suspension were all twisted up. I mean, and this is a 1-ton truck, right, that we're talking about. So it was evident that it had seen a load just like the Cherokee had. But by the time the crew got there, it was not in the snow.
Wow.
It was sitting
That's amazing. I mean, yeah, you know, the power of the snow load and that weight. And like we talked about, the Sierra cement, that's a very wet snow up in Tahoe typically. And so that water weight and
Sure.
yeah, the tin has no metal. Tin metal has no no
hope.
no hope against that.
Well, like we said before, I mean,
Yeah.
the picnic benches up in campgrounds, you know, gets smashed
Buried.
down into the dirt, you know, and it's the same thing. I mean, if you build anything up there, I mean, you look at the shitters up there at Meadow Lake that are built like
Concrete. They're solid concrete.
well, brick shit houses, basically.
No, but they're concrete.
yeah, they're solid. Yeah, absolutely. And you go up snowmobiling up there, and you say they're buried completely,
Buried. Gone.
So obviously they're taking a hell of a load.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
Sure.
yeah, it's amazing that the forces, and you look at homes that are built up there in the high Sierras and how close the you know the rafters are and stuff.
Or
I
how
mean,
steep
it's to
the roofs
support
are,
yeah, and to support the weight and get that snow load off. But anyways, so that's cool. So the that's what happened to the K30 pickup.
For inquiring minds.
Yeah, so it, as far as I know, after, you know, addressing some of those like suspension issues and obviously the windshield and the cab and kind of making it so that somebody could sit in there and drive it, it's a GM, it's a Chevy, man. They put the key in, turned it, fired right up, and drove it off the trail once the tires were aired
That's
back up.
great. The old reliable V8 there.
Yeah, so Grandpa is still with
The more you know.
I know the Jeep last time and where it is now and all that sort of stuff. But I know for a fact that the pickup, you know, that's the owner's personal truck. He still owns it, and it still, you know, goes out and runs
Was it
trails.
molested when it was? I mean, when it obviously after the snow melted and it was clear, was anything stripped off of it, or was it pretty much as it was?
Yeah, I don't recall hearing about anything, you know, from being vandalized or, you know, malicious in that regard at all. I think even still on Father's Day that year, just with the snow that we had, it was still an expert only type
just to get in
trail
there.
condition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just, the other thing was so intense that it didn't compare to most of those Glacier Girl trips, but it's, you know, there were no, you know, regular Jeeps or weekend warriors that were on the trail at that point.
I hate leaving a rig on the trail at night, whether it's mine or somebody else. I mean, I stay with my rig. I've never left my rig overnight on the trail by itself. But yeah, it's just, you just don't know. But in those conditions, like you say, it's like, if you can get out there, you know, it's going to be an effort and a half just to get to the rig and then hauling parts off or something.
Sure.
That's just, and it's just, yeah. It's not our community, not our normal community to do that.
That reminds me of a quote that I think the first time I heard it was in Mexico, but bad roads bring good people, right?
Interesting.
If it takes a lot of effort to get in,
You heard that in
and it's
Mexico?
challenging, then absolutely, yep.
That's good. That's a good quote. Bad roads bring good people.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so that certainly circumstance.
'Cause you gotta have some
anybody
skill.
that was in there.
That's be a new soundbite
Yes,
for the soundboard.
and equipment.
It might be.
You're obviously into that lifestyle, and you're not there to pick apart somebody else's rig.
No, you're
so.
not looking for an easy grab or something. Yeah.
Well, that's really a dick move if you do too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
as
Interesting.
we like to say on the show, don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick. It's real simple.
Hey,
It's a simple life motto. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Just leave other people's shit alone.
Don't drive a Toyota. Don't be a dick. Those are our two mottos.
Man, I'm
You only
psyching
got
out
one.
over
You
here
only got
between
one
the-
of the two.
Hey, how come you're not up at the Overland Expo up in the Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest right now?
Dude, you could blow them away
But one
with
of
your
my
Toyota
favorites-
on tracks right now. That would just blow them out of the water.
A Toyota 4Runner with tracks and a rooftop
RGB
tent.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, in a scuttle. If you you rolled up with your Toyota on tracks with a RTT, a rooftop tent, and you pop out a scuttle and a Batwing awning and some Crocs, dude,
Crocs.
you would blow their mind right now. I
beggars
know.
can't be choosers, man. Earlier today, I posted that story looking for somebody in my neighborhood or coming through the neighborhood, see if I can get a set of tires, a ride back. So So we love you,
Yes.
Overlanders.
Yes,
this
there you
weekend.
go.
Please.
No, it's a big event. We joke around. I sent a few funny texts to people that are there, the trail chasers and Snail Trail that's there. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about it. It's big. It's Power Tank's there.
Oh yeah.
Of course, ARB. All these big companies are there. It's undeniable that Overlanders are taking over the world. So whatever. But
we probably would have had Justin from Factor 55 tonight.
Exactly. He's at the Overland show. So that's what really set it off for me is like, if Justin from Factor 55's at the Overland show, and if he's wearing Crocs, like red, white, and blue Crocs, I wouldn't doubt it. But we'll see.
Well, those Overlanders, they're not afraid to slap down the credit card for all the good stuff too. I mean, they're willing to spend a fair amount of change, man.
Right. No, it's good. We joke around about it. Hey, like we say, we even Toyotas and stuff, if you're out there four-wheeling and having a good time, that's what it's all about. So, whether you're on a little fire road to like extreme rock crawling on Fordyce, or Sand Hollow.
That's right. And still, don't be a dick.
From overlanding to what, Nick? Yeah, buggy landing. That's it. Yeah, Husband coined that term. I don't know. I think he was the original. Well, we'll give him credit where credit's due, but I liked it. It was out of the Rubicon there, buggy landing.
Did he copyright that?
He should. He should make some shirts too. We met that Loose and Lost guy out there that makes all these shirts and stuff with the
cool, like
the mullet, the truck camper mullet.
Oh yeah.
That's hilarious. A good one, yeah. Don't get your dick caught in machinery. That's the other one that he's got too. Anyways, okay, we're sidetracking here, Nick. Let's anything else on Glacier Girl? I mean, what an incredible story, and it just evolved and how it all worked out. But I mean, that in reality, that XJ should have been there till the snow completely melted. No, not till now, but till it melted, and then it would have been a quote unquote easy, tow off the trail on a hot summer July day, right?
Yeah, but it was.
But to do what you guys accomplished, and with the rigs, and it's pretty amazing to me that the two quads with the tracks pulled that thing out. I mean, that just is a tribute or a testament to how powerful those tracks are. You got 4 tracks driven by an engine,
sure,
to pull something like that stuck. I mean, just purely stuck in snow, heavy snow, wet snow, out of that hole. And so, anyways, yeah, what an incredible story.
So the cool thing, this will be a delayed segue because that sets us up perfectly to talk about some gear a little bit later in the kinetic tow strap.
Yes.
Right? Allowing maybe a smaller, less equipped vehicle to do great things. So we'll definitely get to that. But I do have that's
a little teaser, Chris, of our off-road recovery here that we're going to get into.
A professional. He's auditioning, I think. So.
I think he is. I think he wants to be host.
He might. So
you better watch out. He's taking your job.
People also kind of, I asked the same question in my mind. It's like, how did this become Glacier Girl? How did the name?
Yeah,
Glacier
how did the
Girl?
name come about?
And there's a history to that. It's legit.
You're behind, Chris. That is the last Glacier Girl related question that I have that we'll go over here today. And I apologize for the dog noise in the background.
You got hardwood floors? Yeah, I just put them in my house, but I don't have a dog.
No, not yet.
Maybe I need to get one.
So how did the name come to be? Great question. I'm surprised I didn't think of it when you had asked me last time, like, of all the comments and all the things that people say online. That's a big one, right? And so it came back up this week. So the owner of the truck and his son's Jeep, and he's the one that coordinated this whole thing. He coined the phrase, and it was selected as a tribute to Glacier Girl. So Glacier Girl is the name that was given to a P-38, a Lockheed P-38 fighter during World War II. So early on in World War II, there was a convoy of jets. Like, I think we're talking June, so we're 6 to 7 months after the U.S. was dragged in
propeller
to World War
planes,
II.
by the way.
Yes.
So we started sending equipment and aircraft over to Europe to stage and be ready, right, to defend the Allies in World War II. So there was a squadron of, I think it was 4 or 5 fighters, P-38s, and a B-17 bomber that flew from the East Coast, and they were heading to England, to a base out there somewhere. And they came into some real crappy weather over the North Atlantic and decided to divert to a base in Greenland. And the weather was so bad that they were trying all sorts of different things. They tried to get above the cloud ceiling, so they went way up high. They dropped way down low because they were freezing their asses off in the airplanes. Like, these are not like when you and I fly on an airplane, right? We're talking about military aircraft during World War II. You're not they're not conditioned cabs, right?
I'm luxury liners.
I'm flying Southwest. Chris is flying private aircraft, so that's the difference.
Wait,
there.
we have Lorenzo Air. I mean,
no, Lorenzo Air's long gone. He lost that in Mexico on that whole deal. That we had a little lap of luxury for a fraction of a second, but that's long gone.
All right, you're right.
All right, so to wrap it up, so they battled, right? They went up, they tried to get under the ceiling, and it was just shitty visibility, snowing, and I think they lost track of even the base that they were trying to land. The base that they were trying to hit is on the west side, or this kind of the southwestern portion of Greenland, and by the time they could even see where they were going, they were on the east side. It was just a mess. So they decided they were going to have to put the planes down on the ice sheet in Greenland, and the first pilot to land, they were all debating, right? These are all the best of the best fighter pilots, right, in our military at the time. And the very first guy was trying to decide if it would be better to have his landing gear down or not.
Do I put the landing gear down or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would vote yes on that, but I don't know. I'm not a pilot.
I don't know.
Well, what choice did they? They didn't have sleds or skis.
Yeah, are
they
you just going to slide on the
belly?
underbody? I mean, underbelly?
So he went landing gear down, first P-38, and touched ground, and it kind of hopped. Landing gear punched through the ice and flipped and landed on the roof.
So maybe landing gear down was not a good move, Chris.
Well, did he? Yeah, no.
So exactly. So Glacier Girl was that first P-38 that kind of set the precedent for everybody else. So it landed on the ice sheet, landing gear down. It went end over end and landed on the cockpit. The pilot had to fight his way out of it. And that plane wound up sitting on the ice sheet, getting buried in snow. It was not recovered for 50 years. It was 1992.
Years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's a crazy story. And the son knew this history.
Well, Avalanche technically dug it out.
So I believe it was the father, could have been the father and the son. Either way, that family that had these 2 rigs stuck on the Rubicon, they were familiar with the story, and they decided to start calling it Operation Glacier Girl. So for all the people that were poking around on the IG, if you put in hashtag Operation Glacier Girl, you'll see pretty much everything on there is all the different guys that were involved in the recovery.
Wow.
And you'll see all the photos even from 5 years ago.
Cool. So that's super cool. To tie all that in, I mean, I mean, from a P-38 to an XJ that was stuck for a few months, but it's a long stretch, but it's a great name.
And I believe
very apropos.
They dug out that aircraft, and I think it's being restored or has been restored, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was restored in Kentucky somewhere, and then they actually tried to redo the flight that it never got to do, and they had an issue, and they had to put the plane down, I think in Labrador, and change. And then they decided, okay, cool, it's just going to be like a museum piece. So I think it's privately owned now, but it still makes its rounds and it goes to air shows.
Interesting.
That's cool.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, so a little tie-in. Airplanes are made out of aluminum typically, right?
Titanium.
It doesn't rust. Titanium. Yeah, materials that are very resilient to weather.
Yes.
And so Barrett Lake. You've been up to Barrett Lake, Nick, right?
I have.
And you've seen the plane crash up there.
Yes.
Yeah, and a lot of the fuselage and stuff has been hauled off, but the wings are still up there, parts of the engine. I mean, there's still a lot of parts that are buried in snow every winter, and then every summer we go up there, except for last summer I didn't make it up there, but it's amazing of how well preserved that plane and those parts are, and it's just how a testimony to how resilient they are to the conditions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's funny because you wouldn't think of the Sierra up here being that arid, I guess, for folks.
Yeah.
Especially people that don't live on the West Coast, right? That just see or hear this story about all the snow. But at the end of the day, it's really never humid, right? I mean, the climatic conditions we have up here are still pretty decent for preservation. So there's an airplane crash right up the hill.
I was going to say there's another one there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the first or second year I lived here, my wife and I were riding ATVs up there. We heard about it, right? And I found, so it happened in 1962. It was a passenger aircraft that was flying, I believe, Oakland to Tahoe. At the time, the South Lake Airport was used commercially.
Okay. I've flown in there.
The weather was horrible, right? They couldn't set down in Tahoe, so they got rerouted to Reno. And the passenger knew that it's Daggett Summit is the high point on Kingsbury Grade, and it's one of the lower summits that leaves the Tahoe Basin. So because he was already on the South Shore, he figures I'm going to fly through Daggett so I can stay down. Same type of deal like this Glacier Girl story. I got to stay down low. I'm going to go through this pass, and then I'll hang a left and head up to Reno. He was off by half a mile, and the plane ran right into the side of the mountain above the house.
He was off on altitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh boy.
But anyway, when we went up there, like I say, a couple years after we moved to Tahoe, I found a piece of vinyl, like the seat material, seat cover, seat. And so it was a portion of the pocket of the seat back. And what is the one thing that you always find in a seat back when you fly on an airplane, even today?
Card.
I know, a barf bag.
Oh, a barf bag.
Yeah, both those. A lot of times, a newspaper.
A newspaper, yeah.
So I found a corner of a newspaper with the date from 1962 on it.
Shit.
And it was still legible. Yep.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible.
So I put it back, and it's probably still up there.
Yeah.
For somebody else to find.
Well,
but
absolutely.
It's wild. Even anybody that's local, I mean, that's not like a nasty four-wheeling trail, but it's beautiful. Genoa Peak Road.
Oh,
yeah.
Genoa.
This is a fork.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to head up there with you. That'd be pretty cool to check out.
That's a good safety tip or a good PSA. If you go up to Barrett Lake and you hike up to the wreckage, any aircraft wreckage up in the mountains, it's fun. Fine to observe and look, take pictures and whatnot, and reminisce. But do not collect and take artifacts away. Leave them there.
Right.
Totally. Well, think about it. Like, what do you get? You're gonna put it in a drawer,
Yeah.
That's much better. Tell the story like we just did, and then allow that story to live on, because the next person that finds that is going to have their own story.
Right. Exactly. That's cool.
We don't need more. That's for damn sure.
Wow. Okay, so that's interesting. I didn't know that whole tie-in with the Glacier Girl name. I mean, it was very apropos. I didn't know who came up with it, and I thought, okay, that's cool.
There were people at the front end that thought that maybe, it was disrespectful or something, but we're not talking about a wartime.
No.
It was war, but it wasn't like it was shot down and everybody died.
Right.
Crashed. pilot and the crew survived. It's just that there was not, I mean, the war was ongoing, right? There was not a need or any reason to go up there and try to get that thing until obviously 50 years later, someone decided it would be neat. And it was a huge job. So anybody that's interested, have a look.
You can just Google it
online, and yeah, absolutely. You can get the rest of the story.
That's freaking awesome. Okay. I love that tie-in. I had no idea.
Yep.
No idea that's where that came from. I just thought somebody was clever and go, oh, we're going to call this Glacier Girl.
Wheeling Wine and Whiskey giving history lessons with Nick Bailey.
And that's it, right? It's just a cool, I mean, the history tie-in, but just, I love it.
No,
I love how it all just kind of came full circle.
Absolutely. So we know what happened to the truck. We know why the recovery was named what it was named, and in honor of and whatnot. So that's super cool.
That's it. So I think that officially brings us to a close on the.
We're going to put the hammer down on Glacier Girl now. The story, on it. But I mean, super cool, Nick, and I'm just happy to have this platform to tell these stories. Because this was one that was out there, and there was a lot of, of course, bullshit that people, this happened, that. Well, what really did happen? And this clears the air of what exactly happened,
absolutely,
how it was recovered, what it took to recover it, and how long it took to recover it.
Sure.
Yeah, and that, the Forest Service was involved and notified, and I mean, it's just, it's cool. It's a neat aspect and a happy ending at the end of the day. But man, what a story.
A little interesting. You mentioned the Forest Service. A little interesting tidbit. Anybody that's ever been part of like a adopt a trail or a volunteer operation with our local trails, where the Forest Service is a part, after the owner had got in touch with them, they were interested in hearing the number of man hours that were spent, right? At this time, the entire thing this whole story we talked about was a volunteer effort, right? And so they wanted to know what all these different people from all walks of life, what was the total man hour time?
Right.
They were curious because they get, some of the grant funding and the allocations for all sorts of government dollars that are spent on this trail that we all get to enjoy are based on things like that.
Sure.
When they get feedback, right? They get feedback from the public so that, I mean, at the end of the day, there could be naysayers or the people that say we should have waited, but all it did was help because we racked up, it was ridiculous. I don't know if it was 300 man hours or 400 man hours, but it was a big number, and the owner was, he's a professional. He's a really cool guy, and he kept really good records, and upon request gave all that back to them. So, that's just, it makes it sweeter. And I may have jumped the gun a hair. There's one last thing that I need to mention as far as the Glacier Girl. So, at the time, there's a gentleman. He's on IG as Desert Chief. His name is Matt Mogadum, and he wrote an article. He had seen the stuff online, Reno 4x4, Pirate 4x4, right, at the time.
Right.
Thought it was a really good story. He wrote an article that covered everything up and through the Cherokee recovery.
Okay.
And I'm very fortunate that he did, because this platform is better. Like, it's been great that I've been able to share the story. But every time in the last 5 years, when a random person online had asked me what had happened, I would just copy the link. It's still out there. You can find it today. I'd copy the link for Matt's article and send it to him, because he did a really great job of covering it. And I think, Jason, you had mentioned that up until now, that was, the best version of the story that you had.
Exactly. There wasn't a whole lot. So that one article,
bits and pieces here and there you had to puzzle together.
Yeah. And people that did their homework found out the real story, and then people that just wanted to know their own story or fabricate their own story came up with their story. But this is good. It's good. So perfect, man. So let's get into just the tip with Nick here.
Whoa.
Well,
Welcome to Just a Tip with Nick. So
After hours,
this
Wheeling Wine
this
and
leads
Whiskey.
into recovery, and you and I have talked a lot about different recoveries, and every recovery is unique, and there's no, cookbook method of like, oh, you're stuck in mud, here's what you do, A, B, C, D. It doesn't work that way. Every vehicle, different weights, the severity of stuck. Is the vehicle that's stuck able to start its engine and help, or is it a dead soldier? There's so many, and I get this question all the time in my 30 plus years of wheeling. It's like, what do I need for recovery gear? How do I get unstuck? What,
Yes.
that's it, Chris. It's yes. It's like all the above. There's no set, thing. I mean, there's certain tools that you should have as a four-wheeler, whether you're like, we teach the safety clinic and we talk about recovery, and it's like, okay, the first thing I promote is a high lift jack. That has gotten me out of most situations off-road.
Sure.
A tow strap and a winch. Now, a winch is a luxury item at the end of the day. If you are out by yourself, you shouldn't be, but if you're out by yourself, you better have a freaking winch. So those are the three items that we talk about, but I would love to hear from your experience, what you recommend, the basics, and talk about some different recovery techniques that you've been involved with over the years, and things that you've seen work, and then maybe some things that you're like, oh no, I'm never doing this again. This didn't work,
Yeah, no, I think I've thought about it a bit, since we started this conversation last week, and I think at one of the points there, I had talked about, when I was a kid in high school and I had a four-wheel drive Toyota pickup, and
I'm sorry,
all the lessons, right? In a 30-minute conversation, I could have just shared so much knowledge with a younger version of me back then. So I would certainly start with a form of air, whether it's a fancy onboard air system or some 12-volt air compressor, even one that you picked up at the auto parts store.
Okay.
If you have it, the better the system is, the more likely you are willing to air down. And it sounds funny to experienced wheelers, right, that live up here and that run the Rubicon all the time, because that's, whether we're summer or winter, that's the first thing that we do, right? Because the Jeep rides better on the trail, you get better traction, your ground pressure is lower, you're not spinning the tires as much, you're not doing damage to the trail in the same way. I mean, the benefits are endless. Right?
All the above, yes.
So
everybody that's experienced wheeler knows that.
So what you're saying is step one is to do this so you do not get stuck and don't need to be recovered.
Yeah. Hey, man, like I said last time, you have tons of volunteer recovery groups that are awesome and that are a great resource for so many people out there. But me specifically, if I had my way, it would, I'd be the last, the last resource, right? It's like, hey, we've tried other things, and now we've just got to get it out. That's who I want to be. So the technical, the demanding, the challenging, the real wild terrain, that's the stuff that I'm interested in. So I'm super happy to share all of the steps that you can take to make it easier to, prevent the stuck in the first place.
Okay.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So step one, spend your money on the best onboard air system that you can afford.
I like that. That is something that was kind of I don't want to say a given, but we talk about. But you're right, and it gives you the confidence to air down and put yourself in a better situation to not get stuck, to not have recovery happen. A, B, C, D, right?
Because I can't tell you how many times it's like, I have this little cigarette lighter air compressor, that I can use in an emergency, but I'm not going to let the air out of my tires because that thing takes 20 minutes or whatever. So just spend the money. There's so many great options nowadays. I mean, whichever cordless tool brand you're bought into, for me, it's for a lot of people, it's something different.
What are you? Milwaukee?
I'm Milwaukee.
Yeah, you're red. I'm yellow. I'm DeWalt.
Hey, but I think both of those manufacturers make a real bitchin' portable.
I have no issues with Milwaukee. I've used it, and they're great. And, you know, if that was in my hand when I started this whole journey of cordless tools, then I'd be there, right? But I don't know, whatever. Sure. I started with DeWalt, and in the same quality, but, you know, anyways, it's here nor there, but it's interesting. No, what do you have, Chris? You've got like
I'm Ryobi. I'm green.
Oh, you're Ryobi.
Yeah, it works great.
Yeah, Ryobi's good for people that kind of four wheel.
Wow.
Well, see, I think Ryobi is a little more adventurous. Aren't they the ones that have like the coffee pot?
They do. It's a little more overlanding, a little more.
Hey, man, they got an impact gun. They got a blower. They got everything I need. You know,
they got a fan. You know, when you get hot.
Hedge trimmers.
Yeah, hedge trimmers for when your hedge gets too high. It's more of a homeowner, like overlander type.
I guarantee you, DeWalt has hedge trimmers too.
They do, and but they're powerful. They could.
Shit.
They could cut the tires off your rig.
Wow.
Anyway,
so
okay, go on.
I'm done. I'm just throwing my mic down and leaving. Fuck.
You know, there's lots of options that are other than the cordless lithium-ion tools that exist now, and hopefully, you know, folks out there can realize that it's an important investment, and so, you know, even before lockers, man, right?
Yeah,
it's something that you should be handling on day one if you decide that you want to go off road, because, like I said, it's not just avoiding getting stuck. You're more comfortable. The whole trip will be better. You're not tearing up the trail because you don't need to spin your tires because your ground pressure's lower. You're getting better traction. I mean, there's no downside as long as you have a good course. So do it. That's step one.
I like that.
ARB twins are great.
Oh yeah, if you can afford that. That's right. Hashtag Chris money.
I think you got one in every one of your rigs.
Not every one of my rigs.
You even have one in your Mustang.
No, I don't. I got one in the buggy, but I got that one on. That was a stupid deal. Just a quick little 30-second segue here. Four Wheel Parts was having a sale, the Black Friday sale.
That's right. We all jumped on that.
And so normally those things were like $500 or $550 for a twin ARB. And some code came up for like 30% off or whatever. And I plugged that in and it came down. And then my buddy in our group, right, Mike, goes, oh, well, I got this code. And I plugged that in and it went an additional 20% off. And I'm like, wow. Holy crap. So I got it like $400 and something bucks, $400, whatever it was. It was ridiculously cheap. I go, there's no way this is going to go through. And it went through. And like 3 days later, it showed up on my doorstep. I'm like, freaking score.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my deal was quite that good.
No.
I had a Black Friday deal, and I think it was a year later, and it was then they had no sales tax and free shipping.
Yeah,
also.
So there you go.
I scored pretty well with that. Yeah. So yeah, really, and it's been awesome. I mean, the thing works like a champ.
There's a lot of good compressors out there, and the Morflate compressor is like 10.6 is like 10.6 CFM, and it's crazy high.
Yeah.
So there's some good compressors out there on the market, but that twin ARB has been very good to me too.
Yep.
That's a great point, because even if I could have shared that information with my high school self, dude,
my high school self,
right? Like 15 to 20 years ago, you're talking about like cigarette lighter,
terrible
compressor. They go to 300 PSI.
Yeah.
But they move, one cubic centimeter.
Yeah. Stupid. And then it gets hot and shuts off. And
So there's no excuse nowadays.
No, there's some great
ARB,
compressors out on the market.
The Morflate, I mean, no excuse.
Viair, don't forget about Viair.
Yeah, Viair still in there too. But yeah, it's just very, very good, solid options out there for air and backup. So I like that point though, Nick, and to go back to that, it's just, that confidence level. It's like, well, if I air down, how am I going to air back up? Well, if you got the means, then you're not you're going to feel more obligated to air down. Air down for
I
what?
can't tell you, that's like the most common thing. Even on those volunteer groups, right? Like the people, there's so many folks that don't actually, well, I won't say don't want to help, but the way that they can help is just by replying on Facebook. And so the first thing, right, it's the joke, like, did you air down, right? So if you make that easier on yourself, if you know that you have an efficient, reliable means, then you'll do it. And a lot of times that'll bail you out.
I see it all the time with first-time four-wheelers. It's like, did you air down? Yeah, I aired down from 35 to 25. I'm good. No, you need to get down to like 12, maybe 15. Okay, just get me down to 15 to start out. So
totally.
Yeah, no, that's awesome and very, very true. And it's we've talked about it before several times on the podcast. It's the number one thing you can do to improve your off-roading experience, and it doesn't cost you a freaking dime, right?
Not a penny.
Right? Just air down for what? Just air down because it's going to help you out.
And the reality is, if you're supposed to not wheel alone, right? We keep hammering away at that. Don't ever wheel alone. And so usually in your group, somebody's going to have onboard air. I remember I was on a run, one of my first ever runs many years ago. The week before going on that trip, I installed my first onboard air system. It was a Viair, and I went on a club run. I wasn't even a member of the club yet, and we finished Slick Rock Trail, and I pulled off right by Alpine Lake right there, and people were like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting ready to air up," and I had like 5 rigs parked around me. So as soon as I finished airing myself up, everybody was like, "Can I air up?" And I air up. It's like, "Yeah, no problem, dude. Whatever." So yeah, just it's usually you don't wheel alone, and if you're in a group, somebody's gonna have air. So definitely air down. It's free.
Yeah, no, that's good. So what else? You've seen or what other tips you got there, Nick? Just a tip with Nick.
Wow.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
All right. So
we're here to serve.
In today's world, taking advantage again of the technology, and one of the other things that is all the rage right now, but the kinetic strap, the snatch strap, right?
Perfect.
So we touched on it earlier, and we left that little breadcrumb that we were going to be coming back. Yeah, because we were talking about two 700-pound ATVs that didn't have great winches and that don't have a ton of horsepower, but they wound up being the thing that was able to pull that Jeep out of the hole. So yeah, a kinetic strap is awesome, just a phenomenal addition to anybody's toolbox. But to be cliche, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So
this is true.
You can do a lot with the kinetic strap, but in a way, the stakes are higher in all sorts of different reasons, and I can tell you why, hopefully pretty efficiently here. So there's several companies that make kinetic straps, and there's all sorts of different ratings. So step number 1 would be anybody listening that has, maybe they have a Jeep, or maybe they have a K30 like Grandpa, and it weighs 2,000 pounds more than a Jeep. If you're buying a strap, what makes the most sense is to buy a strap that is rated for your vehicle. So you're talking about an operating load similar to a winch. You want to have a decent safety factor, right? So you're at least 1.5 times, if not double, the working capacity of your vehicle weight. And if you don't know your vehicle weight, I'm sorry. Go to the landfill, go to the dump, go to the cat scales.
There's several scales out there.
Yeah, and figure it out, because it'll help you for many reasons. This is just one, but so the straps are great, and they will do some awesome things. But the first thing is to make sure that you, with your rig, have one that is appropriately rated. And I know we're all guilty of it. Amazon is so convenient, and there's it's so easy. Everybody can get on it every night. You can buy something and have it at your house in 2 days. I think we're finally back to normal as far as shipping. It seems like they've done a lot better. During the doldrums of COVID, it was like, especially in Tahoe, dude, it was like 2 days turned into 2 weeks, and it got pretty horrible for a while. But it seems like nowadays they're kind of back to normal in that regard. So,
okay.
People sitting in their houses jonesing for their Amazon delivery.
Yeah.
Amazon. Where's my damn delivery?
Same day delivery here in the Bay Area. So
Yeah,
one good thing about living in the Bay Area.
I don't even know what you just said right now. Like what?
Yeah, it's like if you want same day delivery, order within the next hour and 43 minutes. It's like, really? And it does. It
And
shows
a
up the same
drone
day.
shows up in your backyard.
Well, not quite drone yet, but it's some of those drivers are like drones. They're just don't talk or anything.
I've
anyways,
had
that's a whole
drivers
other
just
thing.
pull into the court and throw the box in the driveway.
They don't even get out of the truck.
So, you're talking about like a golden ticket, just a recovery tool that is super powerful, way better than stuff that we had even just 5 years ago. Well, they were coming out 5 years ago, but just an awesome addition to anybody's toolbox that is helpful in tons of different situations. But make sure you have something that's rated appropriately, and you spend a little more on a kinetic strap. So make sure you use it correctly. Probably the number one abuse of a kinetic strap that I see is, I guess it's sort of twofold, but one is, for a sustained pull. So the strap is made to recover a vehicle, and it amplifies your vehicle's strength, traction, pulling power, right? Because you're using your momentum. So you're moving at the point when you apply that recovery load to the stuck vehicle. So, that's what they're made to do. They're made to pull something out of the hole, but they're not made to drag your buddy's Jeep all the way off the trail 10 or 15 miles.
Right. They're made for recovery, not like towing people off a trail.
Yeah, so that's the number one abuse of the strap. And if, the conditions are what they are, if that's all you have, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but the strap is not going to be the same at the end of that. If you read the documentation that comes with any of them, even the knockoffs of the stuff, that some of the cheaper stuff, it needs a resting time after you've used it, is what they will tell you. And it's true if you think about it. Like that strap has to stretch to do its job. And so if you're repeatedly loading it, you're shortening the life of that thing big time. Yep. So if it's what you have, that's fine. You got to get off the trail, and we all do what we have to do.
Sure.
We can talk about that for hours.
Yeah, we've done a lot of things off-road that are not textbook to get people back to camp or back to the trailer or whatever it may be, back to civilization. That is not textbook, far from textbook. But in an ideal world, you're not using that toe strap as the kinetic strap as a toe strap.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a good reason that when that new one that you buy comes in, don't get rid of your old trusty toe strap that you've may have had for years, because it still serves a purpose, right? We'll get into that. There's
and I carry 3 toe straps in my rig. So I've got a kinetic strap, I've got a couple different toe straps. For different situations. And I've used toe straps as tree savers and whatever. I mean, it's just, you got to have that arsenal. And that's the other good thing about traveling with people, 4 or 5 other rigs, is they're going to have a strap or two, and you've got options up the wazoo at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So the kinetic strap, though, so it stretches 20+%. Is that what you're finding?
I think pretty industry wide. I think that's probably a pretty safe route.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those are great in sand, snow, and mud. And the classic example in like Glacier Girl, where you've got this 4-wheel drive quad on tracks. You got 2 of them. You can build up that. You can start. Because normally when you're doing a recovery and with a normal toe strap that only gives like 5 to 8% or something, there's not a whole lot of give in a toe strap. It's not as bad as a chain, but there are, there's some stretch in a normal toe strap. And it's like, we always teach in the clinic, get the strap tight and try and pull the vehicle out. And if that doesn't work, then back up, little bit of slack, and then try and jerk them out. And then in situations with sand, snow, mud, that's where a kinetic strap works well, because you can build up momentum of that vehicle that's towing and pulling that vehicle out, and then have that elasticity to yank and build up this momentum and force to really get that stuck vehicle unstuck. So
would I still have my front bumper if I had one of those?
No, maybe not.
Well,
I've seen front bumpers fly. That's adequate tow points, Chris.
Shit.
Yeah, so you said a mouthful there, Jason. So,
yeah, I did. There was a lot going on there.
But that's the other point that I wanted to make back when I was saying there was a couple big things. So the second thing is, in this world, nothing is free, and energy is the best example of that, right? You're always changing from one state to another. So if the kinetic strap now is going to work in a recovery where the tow strap or the chain wouldn't have before, odds are it's because you can apply more force on something. So we're back to with great power comes great responsibility, right? So you're going to be putting forces into recovery points on your rig, on the other guy's rig, that it was not seeing before, right? So it is crucial that everybody, we talked about the airing down thing. The second most common problem that I run into is not just lack of recovery points, because that is super common, especially on any modern vehicle.
All the time.
Got to get that. Yep. But lack of an adequate recovery point, right?
Yes.
So something that's going to be able to take, if your rig is capable of getting out into adverse conditions where you're buried in the snow, you're buried in the sand or mud, you've got to have a real beefy frame-mounted, legit. If it's not a factory-provided tow point, then something that was professionally installed. Many folks here are capable of that, but if you're not, hopefully you're not, and you can seek the help of a friend, somebody in your group, your club, or a shop, to help you. Recovery points front and back, because that is a huge issue, and most people don't have the gear that is required to adapt to a vehicle that doesn't have. There's so many things that come into play with the body and damage and long-term mechanical damage to a vehicle. I mean, there's tons of
right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's going to be interesting too in the next few years as we start to see more of these battery or EV trucks, like the F-150 Lightning and the Rivian. I mean, these things are real, and the Hummer. These things are super freaking heavy. And they're going to get stuck. I mean, all the technology in the world's not going to make them, not get stuck. I mean, you can crab walk left, crab walk right, but I can guarantee you that $150,000 Hummer's going to get stuck at some point, and they're going to be who are they going to call? And those things,
Ghostbusters.
Those
Need
things
more volts.
Those things weigh almost 10,000 pounds.
Yeah,
10,000 pounds.
Wow.
Well, and what are they all? The biggest challenge to any EV in today's world is efficiency. So you've got the guy that wants to make sure, the engineer on the team that wants to make sure that there's tow points versus the 5 engineers that are looking at the wind tunnel data and want to make sure it's aerodynamic, right?
Sure.
So they're at odds with one another. And you're absolutely right, Chris. It's the newer a vehicle is, odds are good that the less likely it is to have an adequate tow point. Especially, I haven't spent a ton of time around the electric stuff, but I can already imagine, maybe they did something slick, kind of like Volkswagen, Audi, Mercedes. A lot of the German manufacturers have like a cover that you can pop out, and then you thread in a recovery, like an eye bolt, right? Good option, a balance between aerodynamics and then still having a legitimate recovery point. But I can't tell you how many times this week, we did a couple different posts online talking about questions in the upcoming podcast. And there was one video I posted, a real story, something like that, where I was pulling a pickup off of a snow-covered trail. He was stuck, and I had the Forerunner with the Ruby tracks on it.
Right.
So we got him out and we got him turned around and we spent all this time doing it. And then I looked under the front of his rig and there was nothing. And The truck was a four-wheel drive, a late model four-wheel drive half-ton Ram truck. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing that I could pull on that wasn't going to hurt the pickup with the strap, or any way to attach without doing some sort of body damage to the truck. So I wound up having to turn it back around in the snow, putting a receiver mounted shackle into the trailer hitch on the truck and towing it out backwards.
Wow.
Holy smokes.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, the whole keeping in time with technology and the changes in the vehicles and whatnot, it sounds like you're kind of in tune with it, and you're aware of it and need to adapt to it. And obviously the equipment from the whether it's Factor 55 or Freedom Rope or Bubba Rope or whoever, they're going to keep up with all the changes that need to occur also in the with the kinetic ropes and recovery straps and whatnot.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's lots of things in this world and in the off-road world that I assume a bunch of the listeners and myself like to kind of geek out on. But what's better than opening a box from Factor 55 and pulling out the little test card, right? And you're seeing like the different static equations and setup that was used to test the part, or the similar part to the one that you just bought. We talked very briefly, we were talking about Amazon or whatever. So there are lots of options, and there are lots of things on there that will work, in that worst case scenario when you got to get out. But if you're an avid outdoorsman, four-wheeler, you like being out there all the time, you like helping other people out, your gear is going to get used. And
Yes.
with use comes wear, and something that works one time is a heck of a lot different than something that can work over and over again. So when you do what I do, or some of these other people that are really into the recovery thing, you've got to have top of the line gear, and Factor 55 is a great place to start if you're looking for some.
So that's good, because they have developed a reputation in our industry of being top notch, and they got some sexy, cool stuff out there, right? It looks cool, it functions well, and they've built that reputation in that, as an off-roader, overlander, whatever your off-road status is, that it's going to be a quality product. It costs a little bit of money, but it's gonna get you, recovered, or it's going to do its job, whatever it's intended to do. So with that said, though, equipment failures off-road, or when do you hang up? And it's hard, because you spend good money on recovery gear, and let's say toe strap, for example, and they have a wear point, and winch ropes and all this stuff, synthetic winch ropes that wear. I mean, you gotta, especially you're in the business, and soft shackles and all this stuff that wears very quickly now.
Sure.
The synthetic line, it's like you get to a point. I mean, I've got some stuff that I pull trees with on our adopted trail that is just tattered, that I'd never pull a vehicle. Even a Suzuki Samurai, I wouldn't even trust this thing from a safety standpoint. But where do you retire your gear and go, this is no longer usable to me safely?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, we talked about on the last podcast, right? I had this background with all sorts of industry experience. So when I worked in oil and gas, lifting slings were ultra common. We used them every day. And when you get a product, some products that you buy that might be part of a larger project that you're working on, come with a rating and a big old tag, right? I mean, a lifting sling has all sorts of test data, very similar to the way that Justin sends his stuff, which is pretty cool.
Sure.
That's part of the reason I like it so much. So the short answer for me personally is that I've been exposed to tons of rigging that's been used for setting all sorts of equipment, right? That's real heavy. So if you can, the main item and the main the main reason that you would wind up with some wear or something that is ratty is just from abuse. So if you treat your equipment and you store it properly, odds are that it's going to last quite a long time. And in that time, you'll probably, if you don't have the experience yourself, you're probably going to come across somebody that does, because it's going to make it that long. So things like soft shackles, things like synthetic winch line need to be out of the sun, right? I mean, you spend all this money on a real cool fair lead or some of those Factor 55 products, and it's great that they show. But certain winch mounts or certain applications keep a winch line out in the sunshine, and UV is a big detriment to that stuff, right? Even when they're resistant, it's much better if you can keep them out of the sun. So I use, because of being in the recovery business, the majority of winches that I have are actually receiver mounted. And so they wind up exposed to the elements much more than your average Jeep would be, where the winch is encased in a bumper, aftermarket bumper or whatever, which is good. That's good news, right, for most of the listeners, because if you've got a winch with a synthetic rope, it lives inside of a bumper and the sun doesn't shine on the rope, fantastic. It's not going to hurt the hook. Any of the parts that you want to see or be seen, that stuff is good. Anodizing may fade, but structurally it's not going to affect that item. So so that's the main thing. All of your gear, however you store it, I've got a big recovery bag, and my Forerunner, luckily for me, is 4 doors, so I've more time than not, the whole back seat, if I go out on recovery, is just full of gear. And so all the gear can be in a bag, and it's inside an enclosed vehicle. It's climate controlled. It's out of the sun.
Air conditioned.
Yeah.
Okay, Tyler.
Environmental wear and tear on that sort of thing are slim. With that being said, there comes a point where something rubs on a rock or on the chassis when you're pulling on something, and there's, physical damage that is undeniable that you can see. I spend, I would say, to be honest with everybody, it's probably bi-monthly for me, because I'll wind up doing a job, especially during the summer, things slow down. It's not an everyday thing. We talked about that last time. So I've got more free time than the average person that is just doing recoveries or, roadside recoveries, towings, things like that. So at least bi-monthly, 6 times a year, I'm repackaging everything, making sure something's not wet in a bag and, getting moldy or whatever. So it comes out, gets a chance to dry, be in the shop, and I've got good lighting and I can check for wear on all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean you have to throw things away, but it just changes your use of the product. And you hit right on that, Jason, right? If you're on a trail cleanup and you're pulling logs, that's a job that you can use some of the older gear.
It snaps, no big deal. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Folks are clear. It's the stakes aren't as high. You're pulling something that maybe weighs 700 or 1,000 pounds and, not 5,500. So that's kind of how I manage the stuff. I would say for most of the listeners and folks that aren't involved in recoveries on a professional level, if you store and treat the gear appropriately, these things that you're buying are going to last an awful long time, and really just keep an eye out for physical wear.
So let me ask you this. So with the synthetic ropes and soft shackles and stuff, do you ever wash them out, put the winch line in, a 5-gallon bucket with some soap or the soft shackles and stuff and get that, dirt and debris out of there?
So, honestly, I can tell you that I have not. I make a real strong effort to where that stuff is not sitting in the dirt and it's not being stepped on when it's in the dirt.
Right.
Because of where I live, and, measurable snowfall still happens maybe 6 months out of the year, right? It's pretty common. The majority of the stuff I do is especially if I'm using winches. Like I'll have some projects or some jobs that come up in the summertime, but usually it is not recovery related. It may be parts running, or from a mechanic standpoint, running into the Rubicon and helping somebody fix something. Or so my gear thankfully stays pretty clean. But yeah, so straps, winch lines, shackles. I'm just very careful with that stuff. I mean, it's top of the line stuff. Spend good money on it, and there's no reason, especially for a soft shackle, it should just never be in the dirt. Like it goes from the bag to a recovery point, and it's used for recovery, and then it goes back in the bag. You might.
I don't know. I seem to recover a lot of Toyotas, and they're always buried in the dirt or something, and that's when all my stuff just gets worn. So I hose them down in the driveway with, a little soapy water and, just saying, or Dodges. That happens too. With toe straps, a lot of Dodges. So, it just is what it is. I get it,
Wow.
If something winds up
You've never recovered my Dodge.
Certainly you would, it'd be a good method as long as you make sure it's totally dry. You got a good place to hang it up, right? Before you put it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hang it up in the backyard or the driveway and just let it air dry and done. Okay, so that's cool. So let's talk about some other recovery tools that you might use. I mean, so we just talked about all the synthetic stuff, but is there anything else that maybe the common off-roader would be like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yep. So a real good, it's funny because at one of the points earlier you had made a brief reference to chain, and at that point we were talking about towing. However, there's not many situations where I'm a fan of using a chain, when you're towing something, but as part of a recovery solution, everybody with a Jeep should probably have a 10-foot piece of chain in a bag, because you can use it for all sorts of things, right? So if you've got a suspension failure, whether you're leaf sprung or you're linked, the odds of being able to wrap something up with a chain, stick a bolt through it with a couple washers, and cinch something down and create, a portable clamping device on the trail is like priceless. In addition, we talked about recovery points earlier, and some of the vehicles that don't have good recovery points, you can use a chain to grab all sorts of spots on the frame or suspension, and then bring that force out to a point that's accessible for your other recovery gear. So to have something available, hopefully it's not too heavy, but check the rating, make sure it makes sense, and go down to your hardware store. You can buy a 10-foot piece of chain, put it in a bag. It's priceless.
The couple hooks. Yeah. The chain hooks that hook back on the chain. Because we talk about that, and back in the day in the 80s, chains, if you had a chain for recovery, it was like, oh yeah, you're badass, or you got it looped around your bumper or something. But safety wise, it was not the ideal choice, because if it broke, came 40 loose,
pounds of steel flying
exactly, with all that force. And so we try to avoid any metal when we're doing recovery, but there are exactly what you just illustrated with, getting a recovery point or wrapping a chain around a rock that's not going to, chafe and wear. That's okay, and that's good. So there's aspects where the chain does come in handy, or tying down suspension, or there's several things where, and I carry, I don't have quite 10 feet. I think I got about 6-7 feet of chain in the Jeep. With a couple hooks on the end, and that's come in handy on the trail for sure.
Well, you need a piece of chain too if you're going to use your high lift jack, which we mentioned earlier briefly. But the high lift jack, if you want to use it as a winch, it's helpful if you have a piece of chain for that.
Yeah, chain's not going to stress, not going to stretch or give, and so a situation like that's okay to use it, but if you are pulling a vehicle out, you don't want to use a chain to pull that vehicle out. There's no give. and it's going to put a lot of extraneous force on the tow vehicle and the vehicle that's getting yanked out and stuff. So
don't use a chain in lieu of a kinetic strap.
No, not a good idea.
Chris,
not a good idea.
Not
It's
a
like
good
the
idea.
opposite of a kinetic strap.
don't even use a chain if you're using a kinetic strap. It shouldn't be part. It shouldn't.
Right. No, not part of that operation.
Right. So when I said getting a recovery point out or whatever, it'd be a spot that you would hook a winch hook to, or your ultra hook or whatever. Not
Sure.
You don't want to load, like we talked about earlier. You don't. Once the kinetic strap is like this awesome addition to your recovery bag, but you're introducing a spike, force load. So if you've got a chain on the end that, go to the hardware store, grab a piece of chain, and look at the tag and look at what the rating is. You'll be surprised.
See what it says.
Usually you can grab a pretty decent piece of chain, and they're going to tell you that the working load limit is not very high. So the last thing that you do is be yanking on even a piece that's at the end, because now you've got a big rubber band, right? And you're pulling on that thing. Chain breaks, you're launching it. So yeah, that's.
So here's a good point too that I learned a few years ago when I was asked to teach a little recovery class at a Cal 4-wheel convention, and so I did my homework on a D-ring shackle, a metal shackle, and a soft shackle. And it was interesting to me in that a soft shackle is designed to, it's got its pin that goes through, so that's an attachment point. And then, of course, the opposite point of that on the D-ring, the horseshoe, if you will, that's where it has its maximum working load limit. And if you had moved any part of that, like 45 degrees, let's say the pulling angle was 45 degrees from the pin over, and it reduced its working load limit a big time. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't think. I mean, here's a metal object that you think is strong regardless of the position that it's in. But it did reduce its working load limit significantly, where a soft shackle, it didn't care what direction it was pulled in. It didn't compromise the working load limit in any direction. And I was like, that was a revelation to me a few years ago, because it just logically didn't, compute that. But then you think about it, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're pulling on this metal deal that was designed to pull, straight perpendicularly to each other, and where a soft shackle is just a synthetic rope. It didn't care which direction.
That's exactly right. Right. It's infinite, right? It's a circle, and it's the same. It's uniform all the way through. Absolutely. D-rings have their place, and they're great tools, but yeah, they they get used incorrectly very often, and shocking at how different the load rating can be. So yeah, you want the center of the arc and on the pin and pulling straight through the D-ring anytime that you're using them. And if you can't, then hopefully somebody around has a soft shackle.
Right. And then, you get those, there's some Amazon stuff out there. There's China brands and stuff that, they're not even stamped with a working with load limit, and those you should really just stay away from. They may be a pretty color that matches your rig or whatever. Overlanders, be aware, because you're like, oh, it's blue, it matches my rig, I'm going to buy this one. Well, it doesn't even have a working load limit stamped on it. It's not a rated D-ring to begin with, and then you get into a situation, and heaven forbid that thing snaps or whatever. So you really need to be aware of that. I mean, just because it looks cool doesn't mean it's going to work great for a recovery situation.
Yeah, and I like to tell folks that if you're having trouble or convincing, your significant other that it's time to buy some recovery gear or some nice recovery gear, think of it as an insurance policy. That one time that you get stuck and you're able to either recover yourself safely or get pulled out safely, it's going to be worth it 10 times over, because it's hard to put yourself in in that state of mind when you're sitting on the couch watching TV, you're home and you're safe. But when you're out there and it sucks and you need something to work,
Sure.
it's a small, it's a small price to pay to have something that's going to do it well, efficiently, and safely.
Yeah, it starts snowing. You're in your Toyota stuck on the trail. There's not a Jeep around to pull you out. I mean, it's like, this is dire terms right here. And it's like, you need some really good gear. And that's, and we talked about, I talked about colors and stuff, but that's where, going back to Factor 55, just give them another plug. I mean, they got form and function, right? You can get something that's super sexy and is going to work. So that's an exception to the rule.
I mean, we brought it. Yeah, I went out of my way to mention it last time because it's true. There's good reasons to buy it from both angles, and usually you don't get both in the same package. So they've done a great job of bringing that together for sure.
Yeah, and we're not sponsored. That was not an ad by Factor 55. But if Factor 55, Justin, you're listening, we'd love to be sponsored. Wheeling Wine and Whiskey. So,
we certainly
anyways, just throwing that out there. No, so what else? Nick. So we talked about the straps and kinetic versus non-kinetic, and our attachment points here with shackles. A D-ring, metal D-ring, as opposed to a soft shackle, which the off-road community has really gravitated towards.
Needing a little bit of chain.
Yeah, and then the chain aspect that's good to have in some situations.
Let's see if we can spice things up a little bit. How about boards?
Yeah, let's do it. Oh boy, he just mentioned traction boards.
Did he?
Yeah. Yeah, hashtag Overland right now.
All right, thanks for being on the show.
That's great. Whoa, look at the time. Look, Lorenzo's telling us to wrap this thing up. He's over there, Chris, going, that's just gone south right there.
No, there's a place for traction boards, but
is there? Where?
It's just not in rocks.
So now we're
not in rocks. No, for sure not in rocks.
If you have a Gladiator, you can just fast forward, I guess, 5 minutes or something. But we talked earlier about.
Wait.
James is flipping out right now.
James and Gladiator, yeah, you just mentioned the two. That's like oil and vinegar right there.
Right?
Oil and water. Yeah.
Let's let the man talk.
Okay, go ahead with your traction board. Your Bluetooth traction boards. Go ahead, Nick.
So probably, the most notable person that I've ever made a believer with traction boards, none other than 3-time king Randy Slauson.
No, stop it. No. Okay. It's really, Lorenzo's like calling bullshit right now. He's waving the white flag over here. He's waving the white flag.
Is there a traction board strapped to a bomber car?
He's waving the bullshit flag on you right now, Nick.
There's not currently, but for a time there was. And let me tell you about that time. So,
okay, let's hear this.
There was a time, I think it was in, that spring of 2019. the spring of
2019.
Yeah, the spring of 2019. So that was kind of a lame winter too, but it wound up not quite like 17, but it wound up coming back pretty hard late in the spring. 2019, we got some really good snow. I went on a snow wheeling trip with the mighty Toyota. Yep.
Yes.
The old 4Runner, and then I think Slauson had his play car, right? So the LTG, the 2-liter DI turbocharged. It was the very first one he built. It was like built, it was the first, it was the grandfather of all the trail chassis. It was like scrapped. Yeah.
Trail buggy.
Right. Because
trail bomber.
It was made from all sorts of reject tubes from other bomber cars. So like things that had been notched incorrectly at the CNC place where they're all laser cut, CNC bent. They've always got misfit setup tubes. And Randy bought the tubing, so he likes getting those tubes. So he had a pile of them, and he decided that he was going to put together a little play car. So anyway, this very first one, lots of us have seen it because it's been at Hammers the last few years. Has a little 2-liter Ecotech. It's super light. He runs the 42s on it in the winter. And we went up on a snow wheeling trip, and this was one of those days where the snow, no matter what you did, the snow was just not right. Super light, pretty Yeah, pretty
Sugary.
uncommon for this area, but way more like what the guys, east of us, whether it be Utah, Colorado, snow wheeling. I mean, you even with snowshoes, man, you were sinking probably 6 or 8 inches. It was just a freaking struggle, absolute struggle. And we got up high, and then we came off of the Sierra down to the east, and the way that the trail ran, we had to go downhill, which is like a big no-no, right? When you're snow wheeling. In a perfect world, you would just spend all day climbing, and if you couldn't make it up something, then you just back down.
Sure, then you just go downhill. Gravity's going to help you get back to the truck.
Way that the trail ran, it took us over the edge and down, and we kind of went with it, and we were almost getting stuck going downhill. I mean, it was just steep, sugary snow. But I think I brought 4 or 5 traction boards on that trip. So we got to a point where we weren't making much progress, even downhill, even in that trail bomber. So you're talking about a car. Yeah.
Really?
Oh my God.
Lightweight. Yeah. Light ground pressure.
I mean, that thing doesn't even have gauges in it, man. It's like a dirt bike with 4 tires.
I know. I saw that car.
Yeah. It's an awesome freaking rock crawler buggy. But I think Krista spent most of the time driving that night. And, Randy just got cold. We all got exhausted. And then she was Johnny on the spot, jumped in the driver's seat and was wheeling. And it was brutal. I mean, we had Jeeps with us on 42s, 44s, just a really tough environment. But I had that one set of traction boards. And so between the 4 rigs, at any point, everyone was using them. Whoever was breaking trail, we were using them preemptively to try to get rigs back up on top of the snow. It's a super valuable tool in the right circumstance. So by the end of that trip, Randy told me, he's like, man, I've always seen these things and I always thought they were lame, and they have their place, right? They still don't really need to be at Johnson Valley or on in the summer.
Right. Rubicon.
Yeah. But man, on that night, he was made a believer because we could get that buggy anytime that it got sunk or high centered, if it was able to back out, and then we could use the traction boards like at the end of the trenches or whatever and get it back on top. Man, that thing would just sail, and we'd get another 50, 100 feet down the trail, and once it was through, then we could bring rigs through, in progression from heaviest to lightest on their, or from lightest to heaviest, I should say, on their tracks, ground pressure wise. So yeah, so they have a place, and so many times you go snow wheeling, especially with a group, if you're not the leader, you're a slot car, right? You're in the groove of the car in front of you, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, you could take a nap as long as you're still on the throttle. You're going to just kind of follow in the tracks of whoever's broken trail.
It's like Autotopia.
That's right.
At
Yeah, absolutely. So it can be, somebody gets stuck or has a breakdown. Getting up and out of those ruts, depending on the snow, can be a real nightmare. I don't care what you're driving. So that's another time when those things are priceless to have, because you can, a little time with a shovel cutting through some of those grooves, you can use them preemptively. You don't have to wait until you're stuck. That's probably my number one point. So many times I'll go in on winter recoveries on the Rubicon, and I get out to where somebody's stuck, and the first thing that I need to do is turn around. And so before I even touch their rig, I'm pulling traction boards out, and they're asking me about it. And I was like, hey man, I'm going to use these to pull off, I need to make a 3-point turn or whatever. So get out of these ruts, pull off the trail, be able to back on. And so I'll use them ahead of time, and it works perfectly. So they're pretty cheap. A lot of people already have them. So it's a great time to learn how to use them correctly, and they can be a big asset to the tool bag for sure.
Well, and there it is, using them correctly. And it's just, the here in the Bay Area, you see it on these Toyota tacos all the time. They got a couple traction boards, orange traction boards strapped to their rig, couple roto packs, a token high lift jack that they've never used. It's shovel, like pristine, axe, and a shovel and an axe. And it's like, they are the assault vehicle of the Bay Area. And I guarantee if I pulled one of those people over, they have no clue of how to use any of those tools. But they look cool going down the road, and that's cool. It's like putting the surfboard on your car, in Santa Cruz, like how to surf. But so it's fine. I get it, and we jokingly talk about them, but they're definitely a use for those traction boards in sand, snow, mud, soft, unforgiving terrain, and of course in your line of business where you're getting people unstuck. I mean, that's got to be a huge invaluable tool there. So when used properly, they work.
So do you use those with tracks? I mean, traction boards and tracks? Because you say,
wow.
So I have, and the biggest reason why, I mean, even some of the times I've taken the ATV out, depending on where I'm going and what I've got to do, has to do with that. The rolling center. Last time we had talked about my equipment and the fact that to be general and descriptive about it for the listeners, right? We're talking about looking at the track and it's like a triangular shape. So that leading bogey wheel, right, that sticks out in front of the rig is not very high off the ground, right? So compared to a 40, the rolling center of the vehicle with the 40 is approximately 20 inches off the ground, right? And with the track, so we talked about the customizations from Ruby Track. So I have a high nose custom set that is not like what you can buy, but it's an option that you can order. So that leading bogey wheel is higher. But even on the ATVs, you're talking about 5 or maybe 6 inches off of flat. So when you come up against, an incline or a tree, or a branch of a buried tree that's halfway under the snow and you don't even see it, there's all sorts of precarious scenarios that can come up where you can get the front end of that track, shoved or wedged. So, so I've brought them before. I don't have a ton of time on my vehicle tracks, but I've used them before with the ATV for sure, because you can just save a whole lot of heartbreak if you're coming up or over something that is just that's catching a track and trying to go inverted. We don't want that. We'll save that.
Going inverted.
Because we were inverted, dude.
Yes, we're inverted. Okay. So, what else? What other little recovery tidbit you got?
Well,
I'm sure you got another one.
There's going to be another episode because there's just so many nuggets.
What?
But
how about one more?
Else you got?
Since Jason had a quote on that last segment saying that it works great if used appropriately. And so I would put the high lift in the exact same category. So many people have them.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a badge of honor and it's hanging on the side of the rig. But have you ever used it? And if you have, do you know how to use it correctly? It's a great, awesome tool. It could be super valuable. It can be the difference between making it home or not making it home. But man, you need to know what it can do, what it can't, and how to use it right. Or
safety.
I think it can be a dangerous weapon too.
Absolutely right. So that would be my first tip. Just the tip is take that thing off your rig. Make sure you know how to do it, and then that you don't lose any parts or nuts or locks or one bolt.
Do we need to keep it lubricated?
Yeah, lubrication's
and
key.
Then maybe make sure you know the points on your vehicle where it is capable of lifting and where it's not. If you don't own one of the little, they sell that accessory that's like the little steel block with the rubber pad and the 2 hooks where you can wheel.
Yes.
Super valuable. And if you don't have one, I mean, you might get out, but you might scratch those real nice Method or Moto wheels or race line wheels or dirty life wheels or whatever. So yeah. Right. So you so make sure you've got if you own a high lift, it's worth having that little block. When I pull that thing out and people are like, "Oh, I've never seen that," and I was like, "Dude, it's half the tool without it."
No, you use that a lot.
So
yeah, you're right.
Even when you get to like stock vehicles, how many cars off the showroom floor can you use a high lift and not damage something? Not very
Right. Not very many.
None.
Unless they have a receiver
one
hitch.
spot
That's a
on the
good
rig.
spot.
You know?
But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not lifting from the rocker panels or anything like that.
So from my experience also, and you mentioned that you do a lot of your recoveries are in the snow, but with a high lift jack using it in the snow, you can't really utilize it with that stock base. You need to have, carry some sort of wood or some sort of platform, or in my case, I have that giant orange platform, plastic platform that the stock base nests into. That it gives you more stability in soft surfaces.
So I mentioned
like
Greg Rossi on the last pod because he was the guy that was in the driver's seat of the Cherokee when it came out of the hole. So one of Greg's side projects businesses is a company called Hardcore Trail Gear, and they sell a base called the Alien Jack Base. It's got folding. The standard color is green, but they make some different ones for all the folks that are worried about color coordination. And so it has folding legs. It can be used in two directions, whether it's down in its wide, spread out format or flipped around, inverted. It's got a bunch of spikes that can grab into a log or something like that. So I've got his base on my high lift jack, and then you couple that with a traction board, and you can use it just about anywhere.
So what happened to him? Because I met him at SEMA.
That's right.
Like 4 years ago, maybe
5 or
6 years ago. It was a while back, and I saw his product. That they had a tiny little booth, and we went up there, and I go, "Hey, I teach this safety clinic, and we talk about the high lift jack as being one of the best. It's the first thing, second thing you should buy: tow strap, high lift jack,
onboard air."
Onboard air, yeah. Anyways, I loved his product, green, and so he's like, "Oh, cool," and gave me his card, and I don't know how it all worked out. He's like, "Come back later or whatever the next day or 2 days when the show was towards the end." He goes, "If I have another one, I'm going to give one to you."
Nice.
He gave one to me, and so I've always demoed it during the safety clinic because I thought it's a really cool tool. That just bolt on to the clip on to the high lift jack. Yeah, and it's cool that I'm glad to hear you say that you use that because it was one of the most innovative, things that I had seen for the high lift jack in a long time, and then even in the folded up position, it's got like these teeth that could, hold on to wood and stuff. And it's just so versatile. And then with the legs deployed, it's like the jack will stand up by itself. Well, no high lift jack will stand up by itself on the standard base. So from that standpoint alone, it's pretty freaking cool. But yeah, okay, that's cool that you brought that up.
So
they're still around. I think just like everybody, right, over the last 2 years, we hit on that last time. There's been all sorts of workforce, supply chain issues. But the guys are definitely still around, and I'm certain that if there are folks,
I got to circle back with them.
Well, I'm going to see them tomorrow morning, so let me know. We'll get you guys.
Well, there you go. Okay, well, tell him Jason from Esprit de Force Safety Clinic. He won't remember me. I don't think I made that much of an impression, but I do promote his jack still.
Send that information to me.
So they definitely still have an Instagram, and we'll bring that one. Yep.
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
Well, that's some awesome information, Nick. This is
we're pushing 2 hours again.
I know, like we promised. Like we promised our listeners, we get till it hurts.
Just the tip with Nick is very long.
That's a long tip, eh?
It's a long.
Whoa! We have an explicit label, but we can't go into triple X here. Holy crap! So, Nick, is there any mentions you want to make to wrap it up? Any people you want to mention or companies you want to mention? I know we did a pretty good job in the last episode.
I feel like we've done it organically, right? We've Factor 55 quite often. If you've made it to the end of the pod and you still don't know who has the best recovery gear out there, then I'm sorry, but I'll give you a clue.
Right.
It's factor 55. So have a look.
There it
They're
is.
up at
They're proven
Overland Pacific
over and over
Northwest. By
again.
the time you hear this, they won't be up there anymore. But hopefully you saw them there and you got to hang out with Justin. And yeah, they're like I say, doing what I do. I couldn't, I'd have a real hard time doing it without them, man. The equipment is great. The bags, right? Even for somebody, time is money. We all know that. And the way that they package equipment, and you can buy a kit that is ready to go. It's not cheap, but that's a good thing. It is.
Well, you pay for quality, and especially in off road, and like you talked about in all these instances. I mean, it's hard to put a price on having the proper tools that are not going to fail you when you are out deep in the brush.
Well, it's an insurance plan.
It is an insurance policy of sorts, right? It's like you get out there and you shouldn't be by yourself, but even if you're with a buddy or two, having the right gear is so invaluable. And I've invested so much into recovery equipment over the years and seeing what works and the knockoff stuff that doesn't work or has failed, and thank God nobody's gotten hurt from it. But,
Right.
And the trusty old high lift jack, I can't tell you how many times that has saved our ass on the trail. I mean, pulling the handle off and putting it on a tie rod to keep it straight, that bent, and we got it just enough that we can shove the high lift jack handle over it. I mean, there's just so many uses. So super cool. I would love to hear. We got to follow up. We got to get Justin on the podcast.
Absolutely.
You, Justin, and I'd love to hear his follow up from the Overland Expo here, because he's gone from extreme at King of the Hammers, creating the hammer loop and supporting these hardcore off-roaders, let's just say, to the overlanders that they're all about getting to camp and having a good meal and
Get the scuttle fired
and getting the scuttle fired up and all that stuff. So a lot lighter
busting out
on
the
on the Factor 55 equipment, but they got heavy rigs because they got it loaded down with scuttles and traction boards and stuff. So it'd be interesting to hear his take on Overland Expo. But anyways, man, Nick,
How does the time fly up so?
I don't know.
Fast?
I don't know, but we could keep going. Do we do a part 3 next week? I don't know. This could just keep going. You may become part 3 of this whole Wheel and Wine and Whiskey.
Well,
It's going to be Jason, Chris, and Nick podcast here.
Chasing down Amber and Ultra 4 Jones.
Yeah, Amber is still our number one guest. Podcaster and guest on the show.
Yeah, / co-host, right?
Ultra 4 Jones was our first. He's still our first. We'll always remember
That's
him
right.
as our first.
We'll always. You never forget your first.
You never forget your first, right? And then, it goes from there. But anyways, is there anything that we're missing for this segment here, Nick?
I think you covered it up pretty well. There was I had a question that I didn't get to answer this time, so hopefully.
Okay. Okay. What's that? Or are we going to save it for next time? Are we going to give it a little cliffhanger? Like this could be like Yellowstone here. We end with this cliffhanger, and then people are going to wait, and it could be a couple months before we interview Nick again. Who knows?
That's right. To see if people can badger us on Instagram.
Getting busy. This. We didn't talk about the main thing I'm doing day to day, here during the summertime, and working in the gold industry. And I've got a client that has a bunch of different gold mining claims, a bunch of which are for sale, and we're going through all sorts of rehab on that. So I get busier, so it may take a while, but hopefully not that long. We can get back and circle back to that desert racing. So I spend, outside of Hammers and Randy, I spend quite a bit of time desert racing too. Spec drive in a co-drive in a spec trophy truck, an Armada built 6100, and Todd LeDuc is the driver. Yeah.
Leduc.
So hell of a driver. Awesome time. It's funny because I remember the first time I was in the car with him, someone else, a third party, asked me, they're like, dude, what was that like getting to ride with Todd Leduc? You know, did it just blow your mind or whatever? I was like, man, it was awesome. You know, I don't think I've ever gone that fast in the truck. It was just a phenomenal ride, really seeing what this thing could do. But it never, you know, it never scared me because I've spent a lot of time in a bomber with Slauson.
So that's where I was going to go. But go ahead, finish your thought.
So there's a lot more, and I hope I really look forward to. Thank you for all the feedback, and I'm an open book, man. So I've posted that stuff online. Questions, keep them coming. I appreciate all the people that have reached out, over this last week. Hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to the next one, whenever that may be.
For sure.
Thanks, Nick.
So yeah, this is so we got a couple sneak peeks on what's to come. We got to get Leduc on here, Todd Leduc, and you. We got to get Justin.
Absolutely.
Yep. So there's a couple more podcasts. But okay. So one final Jeopardy question here, Nick.
Sure.
So and you kind of alluded to it here, but. So you've got a lot more race miles on, fully built trophy truck, than an Ultra 4 car with Randy. But, what's the highlight of your off-road, wrong seat as Randy calls it, career there? What's like, what, if you had your choice right now, to hop in an Ultra 4 car or, a trophy truck, what would that be?
So I would say that based on the places I've been and have rode, it's still really hard to beat the variety that you wind up with in an Ultra 4 car. So
that's the answer I was looking for.
So
the fact
with the Swiss Army tool
that you can go through the desert at 120, or we've been out testing at Johnson Valley several times, and Randy likes to use a 4L80, right, an overdrive transmission.
Yeah,
bomber cars. So they're content at 120 miles an hour and 130, and a lot of trophy trucks are as well, right? To be fair, and even faster. But you can go from that, and then 10 minutes later, you're coming up Aftershock,
rock,
some of the other trails, and you've got 4-foot rock shelves, and it's hard to eat. Variety is the spice of life, right? And so in an Ultra 4 car, you get a little bit of everything.
It's the Swiss Army knife, as we've said before, and it's been said several times, and that's what really attracts me to that sport. It's just that you are 1 minute you're doing 100 plus out in the Lake Mead dry lake bed, and then then you're into spooners and going.
That's it.
Maybe 12 miles an hour in those cars. We'd be doing like 2 or 3 tops in our 0 rock buggies. But yeah,
I would.
Yeah, Chris would be doing 0, taking pictures from the sidelines. But
I will say, there's a reason that a trophy truck has been referred to as a flying couch. And when you come up on something at 80, 90 miles an hour, and you think, oh shit, this is gonna suck, and it just fucking eats it. It's an amazing feeling. So
that is crazy technology, engineering, watching the suspension work. You've seen the slow-mos on IG and Facebook and stuff of these trophy trucks, just whoop eaters on high.
That's why they cost $1 million.
Yeah, and that the body of the car is barely moving, but the tires are going freaking crazy. Right. It's like a duck. It's like a duck, right? Going across the lake. It's all crazy chaos underneath, but on top it's just like, oh,
serene.
Angels singing.
Look forward to hearing all those great stories
Nick,
in the future. Absolutely.
Thank you again. Man, there's just so many stories. You're so in depth here.
Lorenzo's giving us the sign.
Oh, again?
Yep.
He doesn't even really participate anymore. He's in the cellar right now.
Well, he's sampling a lot.
No,
he's not being supervised either.
He's debottling. Keep bottling, as we've said before.
So, Nick, how do people find you? Let's repeat your IG again.
If people don't know you, they're apparently not paying attention.
I'm still on Instagram land at Avalanche Technical. Website is still www.avalanchetechnical.com. Like I said before, email and phone numbers on there. So feel free to reach out. I'm busy. You're busy. We're all busy. But if there's something that you need to know from me, like I say, feel free to drop a line or a text or whatever works for you guys. I'm here to please. So I appreciate the opportunity to reach out, and I look forward to trying to figure out what we're going to talk about next time. Because all the recoveries that I wanted to talk about tonight, we didn't even talk about one. I don't think.
Well, we'll get into it, and we got to do this in person here. I'll be working my way up that direction. Hopefully, Chris will be joining me.
Perfect. Come on up.
Yeah, it is. It's great. And again, thank you for your wisdom. And the story of Glacier Girl is going to go down in history. I love the tie-in with history, as we learned tonight. And definitely a cool thing in the off-road community, and appreciate what you do, helping out the wandered wheeler that gets stuck once in a while.
That's right.
And we all need help. And if you're not getting stuck, you're not wheeling hard enough. Right. So it's all good. But yeah, super cool. Definitely looking forward to more conversa's with Just the Tip with Nick. It could be a new segment. Maybe we do a little 15-minute segment here on the podcast. We'll see. We're evolving with the times,
That's right.
So Nick, that's great, man.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. Jason, how do they get a hold of us?
I don't know. They don't need to get a hold of us.
Well, that's Chris or Jason at wheelingwineandwhiskey.com. I love to hear from people. You can also reach out and give
What's
Jason,
our phone number?
Oh, shit. I was just getting to that.
Oh.
So you can leave a voicemail, 408-800-5169.
408-800-5169 is our voicemail.
Or some people call it the complaint line.
Yeah, and we will. Next episode, we got to play. We've got some good voicemails on there. And then, of course, we got the Gear Wrench Corey contest that we got to even do.
That's right. And there's another contest coming up sometime in the near future, too.
Oh, yes. We've got another giveaway coming up here shortly. Hit us up on the IG. A video just blew up there that I just posted over. I did a bunch of videos. I had some unexpected time in my life, and I posted up like 5 or 6 reels, and one of them just caught fire, and it's just like, okay, this is just silly. But tell your friends, family. That was the cool thing. Nick and I were talking about. It's like, you don't have to care about wheeling or wine or whiskey to have fun listening to the podcast. Tell your friends about it, and
let them be the judge.
We're entertaining. We got some good stories to tell, and it's all real world stuff.
Some shenanigans.
A few shenanigans. We love shenanigans.
Is that a restaurant?
I think it is in a bar.
In a bar,
right? You've been there. Yeah. So there you have it. More to come. Stay tuned. This was episode 164, Wheeling Wine and Whiskey. I'm sure we'll have Nick on here again shortly, our first back-to-back guest. You have that designation, Nick, whatever that's worth. Get you. Lorenzo will send you a hat or something. I don't know. We'll see.
A sticker, maybe.
A
badge.
Sticker and a hat.
You have to get a badge. Patch. We don't need no stinking badges.
We don't need no stinking badges. All right, Chris. With that,
we're out.